All right, we are ready to get started with our read aloud. Have a seat, Gia. Corey. All right, remember to mask up when you are done eating. All right, I had to find where we left off. Maybe Vicus would send help. But how would he know where they were? And who knew how things were going in Regalia anyway? Gregor and Henry had played out the last stanza of the Prophecy of Greg. But did that mean the humans had won the war? He had no idea. Gregor squeezed his eyes shut and pressed his palms into them. He had never felt so desolate in his whole life. He tried to console himself with the idea that the prophecy of Gray had said that 8 of them would live. Well, Rip Red will probably manage, but if the 7 of us sitting on this ledge are going to survive, we'll need a miracle, he thought. And that's when the miracle happened. Gregor? Said a puzzled voice. He wasn't really sure he'd heard it. Gregor, is that you? Slowly, not willing to believe it. Corey, thank you. Gregor lifted his eyes towards the sound. His dad had weakly propped himself up onto one elbow. He was shaking from the exertion and his breath was shallow, but there was a look of recognition in his eyes. Dad, he said. Dad? What are you doing here, son? Said his dad, and Gregor knew his mind was clear. He couldn't move. He should have run into his dad's arms, but he suddenly felt afraid of this stranger dressed in rat skins who was supposed to be his father. Was he really sane now? Or by the time Gregor crawled across the few feet of stone that separated them, would he again be mumbling about fish and abandoning Gregor to the darkness? "Gaggle!" piped a little voice. "Gaggle, me out!" said Boots. Gregor turned and saw her struggling to free herself from the webbing that secured her to Temp's back. He hurried over to her and ripped away the webs. It was easier than dealing with his dad. "Drink! Breakfast?" said Boots as he pulled her free. Gregor smiled. If she wanted to eat, she must be feeling better. "Cookie?" she said hopefully. Okay, he said, but look who's here. It's Daddy, said Gregor, pointing to his father. If they went together, maybe Gregor would have the courage to face his dad. "Dada?" said Boots curiously. She looked at him and a big smile spread across her face. "Dada!" she said. She wiggled out of Gregor's grasp and ran straight into his dad's arms, knocking him flat on his back. "Margaret?" said his dad, struggling to sit up. "Are you Margaret?" "No, I'm Boots," said the little girl, tugging at his beard. Well, Boots's courage might only count when she could count, but her ability to love counted all the time. Watching her, Gregor felt his distrust beginning to melt away. He had fought rats and spiders and his own worst fears to reunite with his dad. What was he doing sitting here like he'd bought a ticket to see the event? "Boots, huh?" said his dad. He broke into a very rusty laugh. The laughter swept through Gregor like waves of sunshine. It was him. It really was his dad. Dad! Gregor half stumbled, half ran to his dad and threw his arms around him. Oh, Gregor, said his dad with tears pouring down his face. How's my boy? How's my little guy? Gregor just laughed as he felt his own tears starting. What are you doing here? How did you get to the Underland? Asked his dad, suddenly sounding worried. Same way as you, I guess, said Gregor, finding his voice. Fell out of the laundry room with boots. Then we came looking for you, and here you are. He patted his dad's arm to prove it was true. Here you are. Where exactly is here? Asked his dad, peering around in the darkness. Gregor snapped back to reality. Well, we're above a waterfall in the Deadland. A bunch of rats are trying to scale the wall. A lot of us are hurt, and we're totally lost, he said. Then he regretted it. Maybe he shouldn't have told his dad how bad it was. Oh well, turn around, please. Maybe he couldn't handle it yet. But he saw his dad's eyes sharpen in concentration. How far are the rats from us now? He asked. Gregor slid over to the edge and looked over. He was frightened to see the rats were halfway up the wall. Maybe 50 feet, he said. How about light? Asked his dad. Only this, said Gregor, tapping his hat. And I don't think the batteries will last much longer. In fact, the light seemed to be dimming as he spoke. We've got to get back to Regalia, said his dad. I know, but none of us knows where it is, said Gregor helplessly. It's in the north of the Underland, said his dad. Gregor nodded, but he didn't see what good that information did them. It wasn't as if they had a sunset, or the North Star, or moss growing on the north side of trees to guide them. They were in a big, black space. His dad's eyes landed on Aurora's wing. That bad. How did you sew her up? A needle and thread, said Gregor, wondering if his dad's mind was beginning to wander again. A metal needle? Asked his dad. Do you still have it? Yeah, here, said Gregor, pulling out the pack of needles. His dad took a needle and pulled a small stone out of his pocket. He began to rub the stone along the needle in short, quick strokes. Get some kind of bowl. Dump out that medicine if you have to, said his dad, and fill it with water. Gregor quickly followed his instructions, still unsure. So, what are we doing? This rock, it's a lodestone, magnetic iron ore. There was a pile of them back in my pit. I kept one in my pocket just in case, said his dad. Just in case what? Asked Gregor. Just in case I ever escaped. I had some pieces of metal back there too, but nothing the right size. This needle is perfect, said his dad. Perfect for what? Asked Gregor. If I rub the needle with the lodestone, I'll magnetize it. Basically, I'll turn it into a compass needle. If we can get it to float on the water without breaking the surface tension, his dad gently slid the needle into the water. It floated. Then, to Gregor's amazement, the needle turned 45 degrees to the right and held steady. Then it will point north. It's pointing north? Just like a compass? Asked Gregor in astonishment. Well, it's probably off a few degrees, but it's close enough, said his dad. Gregor grinned into the bowl of water. It was going to be okay. His dad was back. The sound of claws digging into stone wiped the grin off his face. Aurora, said Gregor, can you fly? I think I must, said Aurora, clearly aware of the rats. Aries, if I point you toward Regalia now, can you stay on course? Asked Gregor, giving the bat a little shake. I can stay well enough on course if I know the direction to fly, said Aries, rousing himself. Mount up, called Gregor, just as Vicus had when they had started the quest. Mount up! We're going home! Somehow everyone got loaded up. Gregor had Temp ride with Lauxa, just to keep an eye on her. He slid Boots in the backpack and helped his dad onto Aries. He checked the needle in the bowl one more time and pointed Aries in the right direction. That's north. That's the way to Regalia, he said. Gregor was about to retrieve the bowl when he saw the first rat catch the top of the ledge. He leaped onto Aries' back, and the bats took off, leaving the bowl and a pack of rats behind. Aries followed the tunnel that headed north, and after about an hour he called to Gregor, I know now where we fly. They flew straight for Regalia now, down wide open caverns. Everywhere there were victims of the war. Gregor saw the bodies of rats, humans, roaches, spiders, bats, and other creatures he didn't even know lived in the Underland, like mice and butterflies. No, Ripred had mentioned butterflies, but Gregor thought he had seen them in the Overland somehow. All the bodies looked the same, very, very still. It was almost a relief when the light on his hard hat finally gave out. He had seen enough. In the darkness, he lost all track of time. Gregor could hear the horns signaling their approach long before they reached the city. He looked down vaguely and saw people waving their arms, shouting. Neither he nor Lauxa responded. Lauxa was not even looking. From the moment they had taken off, she had wrapped her arms around Aurora's neck and closed her eyes to the world. Gregor couldn't imagine what she must be feeling. He had his dad back. Boots was safe. They would go back to the Overland, and his family would be together again. But Henry was Lauxa's family, and he had given her over to the rats. What was there left for Lauxa to feel now? The doors were flung open at the stadium, and the city appeared below them. There was cheering and waving of flags. The palace came into view, and Aries dove for the high hall. They coasted in, and the exhausted bats simply landed on their bellies and slid along the floor until they stopped. Underlanders swarmed them. Somewhere in the confusion, he saw Dulcet cradling Boots and hurrying from the hall with the ever-faithful Temp right behind them. A couple of people laid his dad on a stretcher and whisked him away. The bats could barely protest as they were carried away too, more in need of rest than medical attention. Gregor resisted all attempts to be loaded on a stretcher, although he did accept a cold cloth for his nose. Someone needed to tell the story, and he didn't think it could be Lauxa right now. There she stood, pale and lost, not even noticing the whirlwind around her. Her beautiful violet eyes were vacant, and her hands hung limply at her sides. He went to stand at her side, but he didn't touch her. He just let her know he was near. Lauxa, it's going to be okay, he said. He knew the words sounded hollow. The room cleared out, and he saw Vicus hurrying toward them. The old man stopped a few feet in front of them, deep lines of concern cut into his face. Gregor knew he had to say what had happened, but all that came out was, Henry was working with the rats. He made a deal for the throne. Vicus looked at Lauxa and opened his arms. She stood, still frozen, staring at him as if he were a complete stranger. Lauxa, it's your grandpa, said Gregor. It seemed like the best and most important thing to say at the moment. It's your grandpa. Lauxa blinked. A tiny tear formed at the corner of her eye. A battle took place on her face as she tried to stop the feelings rising up inside her. The feelings won, and to Gregor's great relief, she ran into Vicus's arms.
Yay! Not a cliffhanger this time.
All right. Any quick thoughts, observations, anything you want to say before we move on? We'll do Yanesi.
This chapter was sad. It was sad. I like it, but it's sad.
Derek.
The raptor came up. I feel like it was River trying to come back up. I felt like that.
Manira?
I thought they won't make it back to
Regalia?
Yeah.
Corey.
So, the thing that what the dad did, right? Is that actually a thing?
You have to have the right kind of rock, stone, that can magnetize itself. Hunter.
I am who he was doing, but I don't think it was right that was coming up. I think it was one of the members of the fight.